All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Already got quite a few people on, but I'll give a moment for some other folks to get themselves connected as we get started here. A little bit of housekeeping as we do that. You'll notice that you don't have any audio options on the webinar to be able to speak. You should obviously be able to hear me, no problem. There is a chat, and so if you do have any questions throughout the webinar, feel free to use the chat and throw those questions in there, and I will either come across the answers of those as we go throughout the webinar, or I'll stop and maybe address them directly. And if you still have any questions at the end of today's webinar, you can reach out to the Goalline support team anytime at goallinesupport@stacksports.com, or check out in your user menu some other avenues for reaching the support team. So again, no audio, but there is a chat, and I'll be taking a look at that chat throughout the webinar. Today's webinar is on one of my absolute favorite topics, which is the referee system, or I should say officials, because it is a sport agnostic in the sense of if you are baseball or softball, you're going to see umpire references. If you're hockey or soccer or some other sports, you're going to see referee. Multi-sport organizations are typically going to see official because there may be more than one sport that you have titles for. So today's webinar is on the advanced official system officially, but I always call it the ref system. And I'm going to go through a little bit of setup, but I really do want this webinar to be a real deep dive into when you're actually assigning, and then what happens after assigning, some of the reports and things. So if you've attended one of these webinars before, I hope that you're still going to get lots of good information out of it. So we're going to get started using my familiar demo site here, which is my Northeast Athletic Officials Association. I've been using this demo site a long time, so I've got lots of content in there. But whether you're just getting started for the first time on a new goal line system, or you're taking over for someone who maybe has been using it for a while and you're just getting involved, hopefully everything that you see here is going to make sense to you, and you'll be able to use this information to make your organization more efficient when it comes to officials assigning. The first thing I'll address is if you are an assigner or someone who is a referee or official in chief, you are going to log in using the admin login, which is always going to be located in your upper right-hand corner of your goal line site. So the admin login, this is where you'll put in your username and password. That password would have been set by you when you set up your website admin profile. Starts with a temporary password, but you should have your own password in there. You can use forgot password if you're not sure what your password is. You can also reach out directly to your administrator, the main contact, as we often refer to it, of your system, so that they can manually send you a password reset. So there's lots of ways to get in if you can't remember your password, but you'll log in this way. I'm just going to open my other tab here where I'm already logged in. And this takes me to my Goal Line master menu. Not everyone is going to have access to everything in this menu, and you may not have access to all of the layers of the menu. I'm going to touch on a little bit here and there so that we understand the structure. Essentially, I want you to understand where the games come from and where the divisions and leagues are listed when it comes to setting up assigners with their permission and setting up referees with their permission, so that we understand where that comes from. It's fairly basic, and it just plays on the foundation of Goal Line, which is based on either having a set of leagues where teams will be added to those leagues, or a set of association teams that a lot of folks might refer to as rep or travel teams, select teams, that kind of thing, where you don't do the standings. You just only care really about your own home games. You want the schedule to show your visitor games, but you're only responsible for assigning games that are home games for your team within your association. So that's going to be how we build out this menu here for Select a League. I've got all kinds of divisions in here. I've also got a variety of rep teams in here. The way those get added is initially your administrator is going to have what we call the auto site setup. So the very first time your very first administrator logs in, they're going to be asked, how many divisions or teams do you have? What's your season? How many schedules do you need? So that all kind of gets set up right from the get-go. But you can always add more through the schedules section here. You'll find that there's the ability to add new leagues or divisions and add new association teams in here. So if you have a few in there, but you need a few more, you can always come in here to manage leagues. create a new division, and then the next step is to make sure that it has an active season and schedule. This is where you can go and manipulate a little bit of what those divisions are called, what they're labeled as. In my case, with a multi-sport, it's how I determine what sport they are as well. Same thing for association teams. If you have a new rep team this year that you don't normally have, your association's growing and you have more than one, tier 2A team in your U14 category, you can always come in and add new teams as you go. When you do that, you can say that they're playing other teams in your system so that they're going to just share those details. And then that's the end of that. Or you add a new team and then you go and make sure it has an active season and schedule. I'm going to pop into the managed seasons listing here because this gives a really good visual of exactly what you're going to see when you start looking at assigning and referee qualifications and permissions. So these are all of the league names that exist in this system. These ones here that are just plain by themselves are full-on leagues and divisions. I go into each of those league menus and I can add teams there, or maybe I'm using team registration to get teams into these divisions. But then this set down here, where we see this little information bubble, these leagues are representing my association teams, my rep teams. So as a combination organization where I've got a little bit of this and a little bit of that, I'm going to have all of those will have a league name behind the scenes. So Boys Mosquito Tier 7 is a division because in there I have a team called New Team, apparently. This league name, you can always adjust through the Manage Association Teams tool so that this makes a lot more sense. And when you're looking at this from the point of view of an assigner, you might need to know not just what their age division is, but you might need to know what league they actually play in, because the idea here is these teams don't play, their full standings are not on your Goalline system, they're somewhere else. So you can always make adjustments to these. But the other key to look at in here is to make sure that your active season is set up so that everyone's in an active season. And over here, we can see whether or not there's any schedules. And that's really important to have set up in advance of trying to go in and schedule games, because games can't be added unless there is an active season and schedule. When I click over on Manage Schedules, it's going to do a very similar thing. I see all of those divisions listed. I see what their active season is, and then I can even see what schedules exist in those specific divisions. So for the most part, we've got an exhibition and a regular season. For some of them, we've got a playoff schedule. We might have playoffs in various areas, and there might be a tournament schedule here and there. And those are just names of schedules, and that's going to play a factor in how we get some games in. When you are a referee association, Goalline has some options where you might be a standalone referee association, meaning the club or the league that you actually assign referees to, they're operating somewhere completely separate. That's really common on the Goalline platform, and that means that you may or may not need to add schedules yourself. So having the divisions and the teams set up, that's a requirement from the get-go. You do need to have those in there so that you can then create games. We'll also need venues. That's kind of obvious too, but we'll talk a little bit about venues shortly here. So when you are a standalone organization, you need to set up those leagues and teams, and you need to make sure they have an active season and schedule. And then you're going to be either uploading their schedule, or if they are also using Goalline, you can reach out to the Goalline support team to say, we'd like the schedule from that site to push into my referee system so that I can assign the officials. We have a really great way of tying in schedules amongst Goalline sites. And this creates a really easy way for organizations to, whether you're doing it now or not, to transition to a centralized assigning system so that you don't have the same referees, working out of lots of different systems and having to maintain availability and payroll and things like that in more than one place. So if it's possible, based on your sport and your region and how it's governed, we do have some excellent tools that allow a Goalline site to push schedules from wherever they're being entered into a separate Goalline system so that referees can be assigned there. If you have a situation that sounds like that might fit, I would definitely reach out to the Goalline support team and get started with that conversation so that we can make things more efficient for you, for your assigners, and for the referees who may or may not, be maintaining more than one profile within the Goalline platform, because it would make it easier for them to just have one set of availability, for example. So how are we going to get our games in? Obviously, I said we do need some venues. So you do need to make sure that in your scheduling section that you have venues in the system. And venues are really important to set up correctly, mainly because you don't ever want to have confusion. You don't want to have venues that may be duplicates of another venue, and you may have some conflicts that you might want to take care of in advance by setting up the appropriate splits for venues. I'm going to use this new venue example over here. So if I edit this venue, I can split that into smaller venues. And what this does is makes sure that if we have a little bit of, these are soccer fields, but hockey does this a lot too, and basketball with cross court. If you have half ice, half field, cross court, that kind of thing, this allows you to take that one larger venue and break it up into appropriate splits so that we'll conflict check for each and every one of those. And when I hover over, you can see how it's going to pick up a conflict. If I schedule something on this new venue half B, it's going to show you here in red anything I try to schedule on these other venue splits would be a conflict. And that's an excellent tool to get in there so that as you're adding games, you're going to catch any scheduling conflicts that might come up. If there's a full field game, and then you try to schedule on a half venue to do a cross-field game at the same or an overlapping time, the system's going to catch that and not allow you to do it. And this is just a really helpful tool when it comes to getting your venues in there. So you do want to make sure that you have your venues listed in here. There is an import option. So it is possible to import venues. I think the features on the outside here, but there is an ability to import venues, and you can import them with address information and whatnot as well. And this is just helpful because when the referee sees their schedule, they'll know exactly which venue it is, and they can potentially click through to more information. So those venues are going to be really important as well. And then, assuming you've done your leagues and teams, your season schedule, your venues there, we're going to start adding a schedule. So either you're getting the schedule pushed to you from another Goalline site, or the schedule is just being maintained on this same site. If we run these leagues right out of this site, I don't have to do anything to get games in because the people who are doing that league scheduling are going to be doing their job. And as soon as they add a game, it's just going to be there for you to be able to assign officials to. So you don't have to worry about scheduling if your association is using the referee system as an add-on to their existing current Goalline instance. But let's say you are that standalone and you have a combination maybe, and there's one league that doesn't provide any kind of tie-in for you. So you might need to upload that schedule. You can always add games manually one at a time, but uploading a schedule is going to be the most popular way to get schedules in the system. So upload schedule file. The option, or the great thing here, is that there are some sample templates that you can download so that you make sure that you have all the correct fields. I'm going to open up my sample spreadsheet here that I've got going. Really, I mean, all the information that's required here is pretty straightforward. You need teams. When is the game? Where is the game? What division does the game belong to? So I'm going to be uploading games that belong to both my men's and my women's in the same upload. And we're going to be using some of the same venues here. And I do need to have either a duration or an end time in my my schedule file. The rest of these items, like details and practice types, are optional fields. You don't have to include those in your schedule upload file. So let's go ahead and upload this file to see how quick and easy. Oh, I need to actually pick a file. So that's step one. Actually click the browse button and select your file. So here's my my sample upload here. So I'm going to click upload. The first step is the matching, so that I match up all the columns, so that we're putting things in the correct place. So I want to go up to find home team here, visiting teams already there, start date here. Now with start date, you'll notice that there are options. So depending on how you used the date format in your file, you can always select the appropriate date option. I always use this one, the year, month, day. That is my preference. And it's also something that I just find works more consistently with CSV formatted files, which is what we're working with here. So whether it's a schedule upload or the referee import where we're dealing with date of birth, I do recommend that you use this format whenever possible, but you do have the option of using the other ones. The start time, the duration, everything there is automatically selected for me, so I don't have to make any other selections. The league name is selected there, practice type, schedule name, venue, everything's matched up. Nothing's being disregarded, but I could disregard columns I don't need. For example, show details. I don't have any details in my file, so I don't really need that. I can disregard these columns altogether. So if your file has columns in it that don't matter in this import, you can just go ahead and disregard them and we won't look at those. The next thing's important here, import the first highlighted row. That's a title row for me here, so I don't want that to be imported. It's not game information. But if your file doesn't have a title row and that is game information, then you definitely want to import that row. It's just a matter of, is this a game? And if it is, say yes. If it's not a game, then don't do that. And this is just showing us a general sample. So you usually see, I think, up to maybe 10 rows, even if your file has 500 games in it. So we'll continue here. And then we get to the matching steps specifically. If there was anything wrong with what I uploaded, it would show me here. It would indicate something like the date format's bad or maybe, invalid characters, things like that. It would definitely note here, and I always call them red rows. So you would have red rows here that show you there's a problem, and then it would tell you what the problem is. So here we don't have any issues. Everything looks good. So we're going to continue. And now we match the specific things that are in the file. And I did a little bit of this on purpose because I wanted to make sure that you can see when things automatically match versus when things might need to be manually matched. So I have a men's league. I know which men's league it is, but if I look here, it's actually listed as Men-Harbor League. So I just put in men in my file, which allows me to just open this drop down, find that league, and make sure that it's mapped appropriately. Same thing goes for women, but notice here I made even more differences here. So I used a capital W for this one, but not for this one. And again, I don't have a women's for a league name. I have Women's Hurricane Inlet League, and that's the one I want to select. So this allows me to make sure that no matter what's in my file, nicknames, typos, inconsistent formatting of something, none of that is going to prevent you from being able to upload your schedule file. So we'll continue, and the next thing we'll have to match is probably, I believe it's going to be the venues. Team names, sorry. Okay. So we'll go with team names. Now here, because almost all of them were written exactly the same way as they are in the system, you can see this automatically matched everything up for me. But the dairy team, this team didn't automatically match, which allows me to open the drop down and select a team. It already knows which division that team belongs to, but it doesn't know which team to match it to because I didn't type it the same. So that's actually the Dairy Milk Destroyers, and I just got lazy and only typed dairy in my file. So this allows me to make sure, again, that I'm matching everything up very specifically. So we'll continue here. Eventually we'll get the schedule name and the venue, and that's going to be the last of those matching steps. So here's our schedule. I just called it regular, but the schedule is actually called regular season, and so I just need to make that selection. So the more precise you are in your file, the less manual matching you have to do. I always just like to make sure that we can point out some of those differences here. This one is really fun because this is really, it gets down to that really specific venue issue, because you want to make sure that you're matching things to the correct venue. Otherwise, the system might put the game in the wrong place, and that could very seriously change how those schedules are going to go. So I need to find Cole Harbour Place Scotia 1 is what that stands for. So I have a CHP Scotia 1. It's not S1 in here, it's Scotia 1, but that is the correct match. And I would do the same thing here to find CHP P Scotia 2. And then when it comes to RBC, we've got 1, 1, and 1, but all written differently, right? So I'm able to match those up. I don't even think I have an RBC, so I'm going to just pick something completely different because it's a demo site, so that's fine. So I'm just going to schedule them this way. And this is just going to make sure that the games that we're entering are going to be entered and assigned to the correct venue. So that's the end of our matching steps there. Practice types. Because I had practice type as a column, it wasn't relevant, but we'll just match that up there. And now that's all complete. And then it's going to provide me a summary. And another part where it's going to do some really robust conflict checking is it's going to make sure that all of those venues are fine to have that game scheduled. It's also going to make sure that none of the teams are double booked for anything. And everything was fine here. So I had 5 games in the file, 0 were duplicates, none had conflicts. So 5 records were inserted. So now I have a schedule to work with. And so it's very, very quick and easy to get schedules in using an upload. That could have had 5,000 games in it, and it would be the same process to do 5,000 games across all your divisions, or you can do one division at a time. Now that I have, I don't want to go to women's or men's volleyball. I want to go to Harbor League here. So when I do have games in the system, I can always make changes using the regular schedule tools. We have some great webinars that talk more in depth about scheduling tools, but basically you can search your entire schedule. You can edit games. This is great for outdoor organizations to be aware of, that you can set game statuses as either canceled, to be rescheduled, or if you're a soccer, baseball, kind of an outdoor sport, you'll also have an option in there for rain out. And the benefit of using the canceled or to be rescheduled and rain out option for the referee system is that the game doesn't actually get deleted. It stays in there, which might be really important for the purpose of, number one, reassigning the same officials, if possible, to that rescheduled game, if that's important, but also makes it so that any payroll that might be related to that game is not going to be eliminated. You're always going to see that. And just a quick note, you cannot delete games from the schedule if referees are assigned, which is a safety measure that was put in place so that a game that already happened can't be deleted, so that that game would no longer be on a payroll summary or have history related to who was assigned to it in the first place. So if you try to delete a game that already has officials assigned, it will tell you you have to first go out and unassign those officials. And there is a cancel option that we'll take a look at here. So that's just a quick little look at how do we get the games into the system? How can we adjust the games if they need to be adjusted? So now that we've done that, let's look at our other kind of smaller setup items. The first thing that you're going to be told to do when you're setting up the referee system specifically is to set your titles. So set official titles. This lets you put in the labels how you want them to be seen. So if you're baseball, your positions could be plate umpire, base umpire, third base umpire. I don't know how many there are in baseball, but obviously at every level of every sport, there's going to be a variety of positions that are used. In here, these are kind of hockey ones where we have first and second referee and then line 1, line 2. Soccer would be, referee, assistant 1, assistant 2, fourth official. You could also put in scorekeepers in here. A lot of folks do use this as a scorekeeper assigning application as well. Great question in the chat there. Is the recording going to be made available? Absolutely. All of these webinars are recorded. Even if you don't attend, you will receive an email with the recording as soon as the webinar is over. So keep that in mind for future webinars, because even if you can't make the date and time, you're always going to get a copy of the recording just because you registered. So absolutely, there will be a recording. So our official titles are very important because these are going to be how we determine what are you qualified for as a referee and what do you have permission for as an assigner. So these are very important to get set up early. Another one that's really important to set up early if you really want to use it, and I do recommend this because your communication can get very specific when it comes to using not just positions, but certification levels. So Goalline allows you to create as many certification levels as you need. Mine is obviously a mixture of various sports in here, so yours is probably going to be a little cleaner. But when you have very specific, these are kind of your governing body uh, levels of official that, if I'm going to register as a soccer referee in Canada, I am either a district, a regional, a provincial, or a national referee. If I'm a hockey referee, I'm going to be 1 through 7. So there's all these different certification levels that apply to your sport, and you can make it so that these certification levels are exactly what you need, delete what you don't need, edit what you need, and you can set up the order to be sort of that hierarchy order of certification level. That's going to allow you to communicate with your officials more specifically when it comes to sending out email notifications and things like that. So we'll just hop in really quickly now to find officials, and we'll see how we would use a couple of those things, and then we'll get into some assigning. So when I use find officials, it's going to let me search for my officials based on all kinds of criteria, the usual stuff, kind of that demographic information. But you also now have league qualification. So if I want to find officials who are qualified to officiate novice AAA, I'm going to get novice AAA qualified officials. If I really only want the people who are qualified to do first and second referee positions in novice AAA, I can get even more specific. And then when it comes down to that certification level, here's my officials levels over here. I can select specific levels from here too. And the more I select, the more restrictive my results are going to be. So you do want to make sure that everyone has these values. Because if I say, a referee level 9, but I don't have anybody as level 9, no one's going to show up in my search results. So that's just important to note there as well. I just did it a couple of times, but I'll mention that I use the control key to select more than one of these options. So just holding down the control key or command, I believe, if you're on a Mac, lets me select more than one option in any of these boxes that are pick lists. So using this allows you to really drill down specifically on the list of results that you're going to get. Now, because this is a demo site, that would be probably really, really restrictive for me, so I'm not going to do that. But the other parts that are really important in here is you can check and see who doesn't have their availability set in the system. That's a really important setting for the official to manage. That's Goalline's based on qualification and availability and probably venue preferences, but that's, each organization has a choice in whether or not you're using venue preferences. So you can see who doesn't have league qualifications. That means I haven't done my job yet. If the referees don't have venue or availability preferences set yet, that's on them. And I can't assign them if they don't show up as available, right? I mean, I could override it, and we'll look at that shortly here. But these are nice to be able to use just to make sure, if Johnny emails and says, I haven't gotten any assignments this month, and you can say, well, Johnny, you haven't given me any availability. You have no availability at all. So that's, it's on Johnny to make sure that he's updating his availability. So when I search for my officials, whatever criteria I used, I now have this option here to click to email these officials. I can also export this list and customize the information that we see in the list of results. But the idea here is that I can look for a set of officials, maybe who are going to be, doing really high level games in an upcoming playoff, and I want to send them some special rules. I can email these officials, and it will email all of the officials that are on my list of search results, and I can take some of them away if I don't want certain ones to get it, and then email those recipients, and then I can type up an email and send it off. So that's really helpful in there. The next thing I'll do is we will look at an individual profile. This is how you're going to look at how they are qualified. Referees are going to be qualified based on the titles that you set. Notice how we only see those 4 because the other ones that were in our titles list were inactive. And then we see all of the leagues. And these are all the same leagues that we saw when we were looking at the managed seasons tool there. We were able to see all of these league names. So that's where these league names are going to come into play so that you're able to say, based on this division and these positions, is this referee qualified to do it? And you can do the check all from the top or all of the way across. So if they're qualified to do every line 1 and line 2 position, no matter what, you can say check all from the top. If they're qualified to do major midget, no matter what the position, you can check all from the side over here. So lots of options for that, but you would go through your officials, make sure that they're all qualified for what they are able to do. There are some advanced features with respect to qualifications that allow you to set, based on their certification level, what they're qualified for. That requires the use of certification level, because if they don't have one, they would not be able to be qualified for anything. So that's something that can be set up so that you don't have to go through and check these boxes individually. They would be based on their certification level. Large organizations or organizations using this as central assigning at sort of a governing body type level, that is a really good way to go. But sometimes the smaller organizations, if you've got 20 to 30 officials, you know them a little more personally, and you might know, Johnny is qualified for X, Y, and Z, even though he's only a level 2 because of our region and that kind of thing. So there's different ways to go about the qualifications, but the check boxes here tell me what this person is qualified to be assigned to. That I think is going to bring us to how would I get these officials in the system? Again, multiple ways. You can add officials one at a time just by creating a referee, or you can import officials. You can also use Goalline's registration system to register officials, and then they just automatically become officials in your database. Importing referees is going to be very, very simple or similar to the schedule upload process, where you match up your columns and you indicate whether or not you want that top row to be imported. The other thing when it comes to people is that you could already have these people in the system and maybe you're just updating them. A new certification level or new address information or something like that. If you have a list of officials given to you by another organization, you can import them in here. You can also, if you are importing registration information, you can send them their confirmation email, and you can also choose whether or not the system is going to generate passwords and send those out right away. And we give you this choice because by default, we don't necessarily want the officials to receive their username and password right away if you're not ready for them to get in and start applying their preferences to their profile. So that's just something to keep in mind that, excuse me, sorry. At a certain point, maybe once you've completed all of your setup, you're good to go. You've got schedules in there. You might want to import them to generate their password. So yes, I want to update them. No, I don't want to import the highlighted row. No, we don't have any registration information in here. So I can continue here and it would add these people or update their profile and send them an email with their password to access their own personal referee control panel, which they have to do in order to get access to their availability screen. So that's how we can get officials into the system. Once an official is in the system, I'm just going to open up this incognito tab over here because I don't want to be logged in as a referee and an assigner or super user at the same time in the same browser because it's not going to want me to have that many permissions as a referee. So I'm logged into my officials control panel. And I can see my menu over here. I can confirm pending assignments. I can view my personal assignments, set my availability. There's evaluations, incident reports, my personal updating of account information. We have an advanced feature when it comes to referee qualifications. This doesn't show for all organizations. You'd have to have this enabled specifically, but this allows an official to manage some things that they're able to manage when it comes to their qualifications. There's also a payroll summary view and a conflicting teams. The conflicting teams option is fantastic for organizations where your referees might also be players or coaches, or even have siblings who are players and coaches. So if I am qualified in general to referee the lacrosse division, but I have a sister who plays on AV club team, I can tell the system that this team is a conflict for me, and I shouldn't appear qualified when you're assigning a game that involves this team. So it's a really great way for the system to avoid some of those ethical conflicts that officials often need to avoid. Great question. How can I log in as an admin and also an official? So I'm going to say you're going to do it the same way I'm doing it right now. So I'm logged in as an official using my incognito browser because Goalline will use a token to recognize who you are when you're logged in. It's kind of the way that we're going to recognize, how long have you been logged in for, so that we know when to time that login out and things like that. When you are an administrator in the admin side, and also a referee and logged in using the same browser, the system's going to eventually say, I see that you don't have administrator permissions on all of the tokens, and it's going to try to kick you out, and it's going to reduce you to your smallest amount of admin permission. So if you are a referee and an assigner, having your referee control panel open in a incognito browser is going to prevent those tokens from conflicting with each other, and it will allow you to remain logged in on both sides without having any of those conflicts. So hopefully that answers that for you. I know that's something that does come up for quite a few people. And while we're talking about that, I'm going to talk about another relationship that exists between your admin profile and your referee profile. If you are a website administrator who is a referee in chief or an official in chief, whatever the label is for you, your email address that is used in your website admin profile should match the email address that is used in your official's profile. And that will make the system understand that you are the official in chief and that you would have the ability to view things like incident reports and evaluations that are submitted by other referees or evaluators. There are some tools in the admin control panel for officials that show you that you can review evaluations, but there's no such tool in the admin side right now for incident reports. Incident reports are essentially notifications, but they do exist on the admin side for someone who is also a referee in chief. So the email address used in your profile here, if it matches your email address used in your referee profile, the system will recognize that when it comes to viewing incident reports. If Anne tries to view incident reports, she's only going to see incident reports for that she has submitted. But if we have Shannon, who is awesome user here, she is a referee in chief. If she's logged in as a referee using this email address, she's going to see incident reports that are submitted by all of the other officials, which is really, really helpful to know. So yeah, relationship between your email address and your profiles, but also the incognito browser. That's always been my go-to for how to be logged in as both at the same time. Now, fortunately, I have never worn the hat of actually assigning officials. I have been a referee and I have been an evaluator and I have been an instructor, but I have never had to do the assigning side. So that's a can of worms, and you guys all have my admiration, that's for sure, because that's not an easy job. But let's show you how it can be easier using Goalline. So the other thing I'll pop into to do just really quick in here is let's look at what assigning permissions look like. As long as you have permission to edit referee assignments, you're going to have the ability to assign, and those assigning permissions are going to be set assigner permissions here. So even if you're the main contact or the referee in chief, you may not be the assigner for all of the divisions. And because it's so easy to kind of step on other assigners' toes, especially using the same system, it's easy for you to set up these assigner permissions that break up the responsibility either by position, by league, or by both, and by what we call regions. Large organizations that cover a large geography can benefit from using Goalline's regions feature, which allows you to say the venues that belong here, I can assign games when the venue is in this region or using the control key more than one of these regions. And it makes it so that I can give 10 different assigners the ability to assign these two divisions. But one of them gets permission when it's this region. One of them gets permission when it's this region, and so on and so on and so on. So they're never going to step on each other's toes and try to overwrite the other person's assignments, because they're going to be restricted to the venues that exist in the region they have permission for and the positions and divisions that you have granted them here. So again, takes away a lot of that conflict and a lot of the confusion that might come from, another assigner assigning over top of your games that you already drafted in, for example. So setting assigner permissions also includes overrides. So I mentioned this earlier, just kind of briefly there. If your officials haven't given you availability, you can use an availability override that says, okay, you're qualified and you're willing to go to this venue, but you're not available, and I'm going to assign you anyway. Rink preference is synonymous with venue preference. Level is, are you qualified? And then master override is all of the above, but any of the above, and it could be any combination. So I might not be qualified or available, but using master override, you can assign me anyway. And that sounds a little bit dangerous. I do generally recommend that everyday assigners get the availability and venue preference, but that someone who's maybe part of your development programs or your referee in chief only get access to ref level and master override. And because there's lots of great use cases for why you would want those permissions. Development opportunities for officials who are not qualified but need an opportunity to be supervised or assessed in a game that they're not qualified for. You can use overrides to get that official into the game without having to adjust their qualifications and make it look like they are in fact qualified, because maybe they don't do well and maybe you don't want to promote them to that next level or don't want to grant them that qualification going forward. So you'd set up your assigners and you can have an unlimited number of assigners on the Goalline platform. They're all in there as website administrators that you can have an unlimited number of. So if you have 20 leagues and you have 20 different assigners, not an issue at all. So we've got games in the system, we've got officials in the system. So now let's go in and edit some officials assignments. This screen, I'll admit, isn't the prettiest screen, but it's super functional. So I set up those games for the early part of May. I'm just going to go and expand my date range here from today until May 19th. There's lots of other things I can do in here, such as grouping them by venue. I can set my override. So right away, I don't want to use an override. I'd rather assign without an override whenever possible, but I can select my override here if I need to. I can choose the sort order, and this is going to sort the referees in my list based on whatever it is that I select here. So distance from the venue, obviously you need accurate address information for both officials and the venue for that to work. Sorted by official level, sorted by game count, so that you can see information as you're trying to decide who to assign where, that will help you to better determine who you might want to assign. You can also drill down on some specific things if you're looking to see assignments that are sort of partially made, or if there's anybody, if you just want to go in and see, I need to see any assignments that have a decline, so that I know that I have to reassign an official. Or you can go by specific venues, specific divisions. If you are using regions, you can look at just one region at a time. And then just note that all of your assigners, if they are restricted in their permissions for divisions, regions, or venues, they only see the ones that apply to them. So they don't have to filter out things from their view. They will only be able to see the things that they actually have permission for. So you're never going to be worried about that. So I'm just going to select to display these assignments and see what happens. So we should have at least a couple of games. So yeah, I think let's see here. I know that I don't have a whole lot of these venues in my region, so that could be why I'm not seeing that. So I'm seeing none available here. So I have some games here. May 1st has some games in it, but there's none available as far as officials to assign. If I was to use an override, I can see who would I have available. Is it just that my officials haven't set their availability yet? Looks like that's the case. So because I'm using availability override, everyone who is below the override line is qualified. and they are willing to go to the venue if you're using venue preferences, but they are not available for the game date and time. I can assign them anyway using the override, and the history of this game is going to recognize that I used an override to do this. So I can select the officials that I want to assign and save those assignments. The official will know that I had to override it because they'll know that they weren't available. But maybe I don't assign and I just say, hey, I don't have anybody available. Please log in and update your availability. So that's something that you'll probably run into now and then anyway, is officials just needing to keep up with it, especially if you have a lot of, no offense to teenagers. I love teenagers. I have almost a teenager. But I get it that, things like part-time jobs, exam schedules, things like that come up, and they may or may not be updating their availability appropriately. So keeping up with those reminders is going to be helpful too. So using that find officials and sending an email, it's going to be a really nice way for you to keep communicating with them so they don't forget about things. So I'm going to hit, let me see. That's a great question. So the question in the chat is, when you put an official in using that drop-down box, how do you go back and leave it blank if you want to wait and make a selection later? So if I haven't done any of the saves, I can just select this empty space. When I open that drop-down, there's an empty space. So I can just leave it there, and now it's not going to have anybody there. If I've already saved it in some way, shape, or form, we have to do something just a little bit different, but I'll show you that. So let's go and let's put I'm the best ref in there. So I'm going to save these changes. We have multiple ways to save the changes. The first is draft. The officials do not get notified at all yet that there are assignments. So they don't know anything about the assignments that are here yet. They're just in draft mode. Because they're in draft mode, the drop downs are active right away, and I can click them from this screen. So anything that's in a draft should be available for me to open up, select the blank option if I did want to come back and do it later, and just I can save this as a draft again. That's going to retain the fact that I changed my mind on assigning that official. So it's going to be empty now, and now I only have these 3 ones that are in the draft status. Once I do decide that I want to assign the officials here, so we'll get Bob Jones in there. If I'm ready for these to go to the officials so that they can then confirm or decline, I'm going to save these assignments as pending. And that's going to email the officials. There is an option to save them as pending without an email to the officials. I still haven't really found a good use case for using that option because in my mind, the official needs to know that they have assignments waiting for them to confirm or decline. So now those assignments are all pending. We're waiting for Anne, Bob, and I'm the best ref to go in and confirm and decline the assignments. Because they're not in draft, if I want to change this now, I would have to notice how it's kind of a link when I hover over these names. If I click on one of those, it now is going to isolate this game for me. So the only game on my screen that I'm going to be impacting is this one and only game. And I now have active drop boxes where I keep saying Dropbox now, drop downs where I can manually update things, and I can manually confirm the official. If Bob Jones calls me and says, I don't have internet access anywhere and I do want to confirm that game, I just can't do it. I can manually come in and save that as confirmed, and I can use almost any of the save options that are in here. This might be a use case for not emailing officials. So now we've got Bob Jones in there. Bob Jones is confirmed now because I just manually confirmed him. But the game become active for me to be able to open up the drop down and select either another official or put it back into pending, put it into confirmed, set it as not required. And we're going to talk about up for grabs in a few minutes, so I'll use that one. Or I can just remove the official altogether and just not have any record, like not have any assignment there. So let's go ahead and just save that just for fun here. So when I display again, now everything's going to be updated. So I've got nobody, I've got confirmed, and we're still waiting on Bob and Anne to log in and confirm or decline their assignments. which is the typical way. So the typical thing is that Anne is now going to log in and see that she has an assignment to confirm. Let's see here. Confirm pending assignments. So there we go. So yeah, we got to refresh that over here now. So she's got this game that she's been assigned, and she can confirm or decline this game. So let's confirm. And now that I've confirmed, I can go and view my personal assignments anytime. A recent improvement on Goalline has been to apply a filter here for division and venue so that officials can look through their own assignments and see, based on venue or based on division, what assignments are in there. So I need to expand my date range because those games were a little farther into the future here. So now Anne is confirmed for this game. She can see that Bob's also assigned, but Bob hasn't declined or confirmed yet. So that's how we're able to confirm or decline. And now as the assigner, let's just refresh over here. Anne has now confirmed this game. Every single thing that we've done here, all of the clicks around have been captured in the history. So this is something I always like to point out, that you're able to look through the history of what was in draft status, when did it go to pending, when was it confirmed, who did it. So the assigner name is going to be here when it's the assignments, and then the official is going to be here when they confirm or decline their game. So it's going to indicate who did that. If I go and look at, that's a different tab. If I go and look at the other game, we're going to see that I was the one that confirmed this position. So, if Bob Jones called up and said, I never told you I was going to do that game, you have this audit log to be able to look and say, well, I don't know why, but the assigner confirmed you manually, right? So you have this history that's going to be available with each and every game for every single little thing that happens throughout the assignment history of that game. Now I want to talk about my absolute favorite feature, which is up for grabs. So using these drop downs, you can see there is an option for up for grabs in here. Up for grabs is enabled at the organization level, but it can be enabled or disabled based on specific divisions. So if you have a wide variety of divisions where most of them it's totally acceptable to use up for grabs, you can, but then you can disable it for the ones where you don't consider it to be acceptable to use up for grabs. So you're asking yourself, what is up for grabs? Up for grabs is essentially some organization or some platforms will call it self-assignment or turning back a game. But Goalline's version of up for grabs is really safe and secure in a few different ways. So number one, as I said, you control what divisions up for grabs can be used for. And then when it comes to people claiming the game, you can't claim a game that you're not qualified for. You also can't claim a game that puts you in a schedule conflict with any other assignments that you already have. I have been a referee for a very long time, and some of the systems I've used over the years allow you to give a game back, and then it's just your hands are washed clean of it. That becomes a nightmare for the assigner because now the assigner has to scramble and find a replacement for the referee who gave up that game. And the referee is off the hook in the sense of it's just not on their schedule anymore. Goalline's up for grabs tool is different in that you can only put them up if it's a preference that you've set for that division, and you can only claim games that don't put you in conflict with anything else. And the big example is folks who don't want to do a lower level game if there's a higher level game available. Now that we have a game available, let's go look at Anne's assignments here, and let's see, we should see the up for grabs option here now. So there's a game up for grabs. If I click over here, it's going to show me what that game is all about. So I can see the division. I don't get to see who the officials are. I have no idea who put the game up for grabs. I just know that it's available, and on a first come, first serve basis, I can come in and claim the assignment. If I sit on this screen for too long and Bob Hockey logs in and claims the game, I'm not able to confirm the assignment anymore. It'll say, nope, sorry, you missed your chance, and it won't let me do it. But I can confirm this assignment because there's no scheduling conflict for Anne for that specific one, and she also happens to be qualified. So if we go and view the assignments again, now she's got 2 games here, and then she's able to use the up for grabs feature from here. So putting the game up for grabs is the opposite. It's saying, I'm still going to be responsible for it until someone claims it. But when I do put it up for grabs, now someone else can first come, first serve, come and claim that game from me. And I just, hope that someone does, or eventually maybe I do reach out to my assigner and say, I really need you to reassign this. I can't make it. And there are rules that you can put in place to your system that will allow you to restrict the timing in which people can place games up for grabs. To get there, I'm just going to pop out and head over to site configuration to show you some of those tools. Brian, great question. So can the assigner go back and list the game as up for grabs after it's been declined? Absolutely. And that's probably the most popular time for that to be the case, because rather than you finding someone to put in that game, putting it up for grabs makes it so that everyone who is qualified to do that game receives an email notification. The following game's been put up for grabs with a link to their login, and they can go and claim that game. As a soccer referee here in Nova Scotia, I don't think I ever had to wait more than an hour for a game to be claimed from the up for grabs tool, because there's always people out there who maybe aren't available on Tuesdays, but suddenly became free on Tuesday and just want to go pick up a game if there happens to be one available. So it takes all of that onus off of the assigner to be able to just put it up for grabs, whether you tell the referee to do it or, if they've already accepted it, they can do it themselves as long as you have it enabled for that division. But if they've already declined, you can do it too. And I'll pop back over to look at that. The official system does have some configuration options. Do you want your officials to get a reminder email? And you can say yes or no here. Do you want the official to be able to opt out of those reminders? If you are going to send reminders, when should they go out? When should the second one go out? And then you can also put in some timing restrictions for your up for grabs feature. And this speaks a little bit to why you might need to use it in some cases and why maybe you want to reassign an official more manually in others. So I give the example, if it's a week away, that's a lot of time for an assigner to be able to find a replacement. So a week in advance, I can find a replacement, and I can look and be thoughtful about who I want to assign to that game, because you don't want the game anymore. But when it gets closer to the game, I might just want you to go ahead and put it up for grabs. So I might want to say you can't put the game up for grabs if it is more than 6 days away. I can also say that you can't put a game up for grabs if it is less than 5 hours away. And this prevents a little bit of that. I put my game up for grabs, so I just didn't go, even though no one claimed the game. And I may not have mentioned it already, but at each stage of up for grabs, there are notifications sent to the referee in chief. So you're always notified and put a game up for grabs. Caleb claimed the following game, right? The official, if Anne puts it up for grabs, she'll get an email saying your game was claimed, but she won't know by who because it's none of her business. It's not her game anymore. And officials who receive the up for grabs notifications, they don't know who put the game up for grabs. They just know that it's available. So you can set some restrictions in here based on your official reminders and your up for grabs timing restrictions to make it so that you can assign within whatever policies you have as an assigner. I know a lot of assigners who would much rather assign an official manually than use the up for grabs feature. But when you're 2 or 3 days to game time, that's really tough, and up for grabs is really, really helpful in those cases. So if we did have a game here to decline, or that was in a decline state, which I could kind of manually get there, but I can take any of these and turn them into up for grabs. So, Bob calls me and he can't do the game anymore. I can put this up for grabs and save that change. And it's going to notify everybody that the game is now up for grabs, and somebody can go in and claim it. And here, actually, because I did that, we can go in and look at up for grabs because Anne can't claim that game because she's already assigned to that specific game. But if it was any other conflict as well, right? Like if she was at a different field doing a completely different game at the same date and time, it's an availability conflict. So she doesn't have a button where she can actually claim that assignment. So there's lots of really cool use cases for using the up for grabs feature. The next thing that we'll look at is some reports that I think are really fun. The payroll summary is, it sounds a little boring, but there's some really good features in the official payroll summary. It starts with official pay rates, which again uses that same set of titles and divisions. So you indicate how much do you get paid for doing each and every one of these. And this is also where I can come in and say, we can't use up for grabs for this division. I can also indicate for my reporting purposes, do they get paid at the venue or do I pay them later, write them a check or do some kind of direct deposit thing with my bank later. So cash games are essentially, we expect that the official has already been paid at the time of the game. So when it comes to your reporting later on, you're going to be able to include or exclude those cash games. So you would put in all of your pay rates. There's some assigning fees where you can have some automatic deductions taken into account for, if you charge your officials a fee for their assigning, which is pretty popular in hockey in Canada. I don't know how popular it is in other sports or other parts of the world, but I know it's not a thing in soccer in Canada, but it certainly could be in other sports. So an assigning fee could be like $1 per assignment. So you might get paid $15 to do line number 2, but if I take $1, your paycheck is going to be $14. So that's kind of how that assigning fee works. And there's also some travel pay that can be put in there. Travel pay is admittedly a little lacking because it's based on postal codes and zip codes. And there are some rural areas where those are just a little gray as far as where their definition is and how many kilometers or miles it might be. So just keep that in mind, and whether or not the travel pay automatically calculated is useful for you, because the alternative is you can always manually add an adjustment to somebody's payroll to add a fee or even to deduct a fee if they were late for games, and you deduct a fee for that or a fine for some kind of behavior. So once you have your payroll set, you can go and view that payroll summary, and you can do this based on some different criteria. I have regions, which allows me to drill down based on what region was the venue in, because maybe it's the association who owns the region that needs to pay the officials, or maybe it's what official is the referee from, or maybe we don't care about these restrictions and we don't use those, and you just care about the divisions that they were for, or even more simple, maybe it's just a date range. I'm just going to go back a year so that I can have some data in here. By default, cash games are not excluded from the total, but if I want them to be, I would just check this. And then active are the only officials that we're going to see. So we won't see deleted or expired officials. Why do we keep this in the list? Because an expired official could have expired yesterday, but maybe you owe them fees for games they did last week. So expired officials will always be available to view by option in your payroll summaries. So let's go and view the summary here, and it's going to list for me on the screen all of my officials, and then if they've done games, it's going to show what their pay should have been. So we look at Anne here. Anne has 3 games in the date range here. I used an override for her pay, so she gets paid $100 a game no matter what she does, because I put that in her profile. But realistically, she would get 15 here, 20 there, blah blah blah. And then there's a $1 assigning fee. There was a prize she won where she got $10. So the total amount that I owe her is $307. When I export the summary or the details, I get a very similar report from both of these. And this is something, if you've run one of these reports, maybe you've noticed. I apologize for going over. I've got maybe 2 or 3 more minutes. So exporting the summary and exporting the details is going to look very, very similar. So let's look at the summary first. When I open the summary, again, it lists for me all of the officials and what the end result is. What do I owe them? So it's going to show the number of games they did, the total game fees, whatever deductions, whatever additions, and then the total. The details, the only difference is that the detail is going to include what the deductions were for. Sorry, it's just opening up here. There. So we have deductions and additions, and it just lists them out separately. So specifically, the $3 was assigning fees. And so there are miscellaneous additions and adjustments, and then there's also assigning fees, and there could potentially be travel pay. So the only difference between the detail and the summary version of this report is the columns that you see. But the end result is it's a row for each official with a total value of what you owe them for the date range that you selected. The other thing I'll point out really quick here is the lock item. So you're able to lock your payroll so that if I need to do this going back a year or however long, I can set a date range in here and lock the payroll for the next hour or for the next day or indefinitely until I come in, or I guess a date. So what this does is it allows me to run my payroll and write all the checks or send it to my bank and do whatever to pay the officials without having to worry about adjustments to the pay or the games being removed. So anything that would involve changes to assignments in that date range or adjustments to officials who are in that date range would be locked down and you wouldn't be able to do it. And it's just to make sure that people aren't going in there and making changes that impact how much you owe once you're already running the payroll. So that's the payroll summary. And then the last couple of reports down at the bottom that I'll show you here are some fun ones too. The billing summary is very similar, but this is going to be more for you charging the association you provide your assigning services for. So if you're owed by the novice AAA team X amount of dollars per assignment or per game that you've assigned, you would be able to use this billing report to provide a pretty good summary that you can export it to a CSV file, and then you can use that information to create an invoice that you send to leagues or associations. But it's just a really good summary of the games that you can include. Other summaries that I always talk about, because I always speak about things from the perspective of like that development coordinator, that person who's not just assigning officials, but you're actually, trying to do right by your officials and whatnot. So game counts per team and position counts per league. These are really, really important reports, I think, to look at every now and then. I'm just going to select all of these guys here. It automatically defaulted to select my my season date range. So I'm just going to click to go here. So what we see here is a summary of all of the games that have been assigned. So I can look at Anne. Anne's done 6 games. She's done the first referee position for all 6 of those games. Maybe it's time for Anne to do a line here and there. Some sports, that's by design. A referee is a referee and a lines person is a line person. But if that's not the case and everyone should be able to do a little bit of everything, then you can look at this report and see, how are you using your officials? Is the same official getting the same position all the time? And is that right? Is that something you need to look at as an association? The position count per team, game count per team is another one, because we all know teams don't want to see the same referees over and over again, and referees don't want to see the same teams over and over again, to be quite honest. So using the distribution report that we can get from here, it shows you for each league. Anne has done 4 games in this league, and she's done a Blizzard home and visiting game, and then she's been the visit when Dairy Milk Destroyers were visitor. She's done them twice. This is something where next time Dairy Milk Destroyers shows up as a visiting team, I might not want Anne to be the official just because she's been there for too many of those situations, and you don't want to have kind of reputations and whatnot coming into play there. So this is another distribution that's useful to look at, just to make sure that you don't end up having contentious issues between officials and teams thinking that they're being wronged by the same official over and over again. So just using this report to see, how are you distributing them across the assignments that you have available. The last report is going to be the assigner audit report, and then I will be done, I promise. I just can't quite remember where it is. See, the official assigner report. This officials assigners report is a little bit similar in some ways to the to the history, sorry, the game history that we were looking at. But it's a little bit different in that really all it captures is what are the assigners doing. So in my system, Goalline's been the only assigner. 2 games have been edited, 13 different positions, up for grabs used twice, availability override used 5 times, and then a total amount of overrides 5 times. So all 5 of these overrides were availability. But this lets you see what your assigners are up to. Are your assigners consistently using master override, which means they're not respecting all of your officials and their preferences when it comes to availability, venue preferences, or qualifications. If they're constantly using availability override, you're using the same officials because you want to cherry pick your officials, and maybe that's against your assigning policies as an organization. So this report would show every single assigner who has edited games in whatever date range it is that you've selected here, and it will let you know what overrides they've been using, how often they're using up for grabs. So to Brian's point, Brian, if you put it up for grabs, it will count towards you using this. But if you assigned Anne and then Anne did it, that's not you. You would have assigned that normally. Not required is not used super often. But this is a great report to keep an eye on how your assigners are doing as far as following your policies go. So that is our officials assigners webinar. As I mentioned earlier, you'll all get a copy of the recording. I'll also be posting this to our Goalline YouTube channel. If there are any webinars that you haven't attended or registered for that you want to check out, go to the Goalline YouTube channel. Most of them are up there to take a look at, and you can always watch them on your own time. And we're going to be communicating our next upcoming webinar early next week, and that's going to be 2 weeks from today. So just keep an eye out for what those topics are going to be. And if you have any suggestions for some topics for future webinars, you can always reach out to our support team and give those suggestions. We're always looking to know what it is you want more information about with the Goalline platform. So thanks so much for all your attendance here today and for some of those great questions in the chat. Appreciate you sticking around with me for 10 extra minutes here. Thanks so much.